These symbols give me a very specific sense of impending dread. They make me feel as though I'm in danger. I'm sure you can understand what these symbols mean just by looking at them, but I don't think you could name them. These are the official GHS lab safety pictograms. GHS is an acronym which stands for Globally Harmonized System of Classification and Labeling of Chemicals. You can find these pictograms on various chemicals. They are the universally accepted symbols for signifying their respective hazards. But what makes them scary? Obviously they apply to genuinely hazardous chemicals, but it goes beyond just that. For people working in a lab, they must take very careful safety precautions to avoid, for example, starting a fire, and in worse cases, an explosion. The fear factor is entirely the point. These hazard pictograms are to be associated with lab disasters, which is important for scientists. When you see a skull and crossbones and a red diamond, you immediately think of death, which is scary, but when you see a high-pressure gas tank and a red diamond, it looks uniquely intimidating. I feel as though these signs couldn't do a better job of scaring you into avoiding disaster, and I believe the element of fear in play is quite similar to this sign, which reads, "If you use methamphetamines within 12 hours of a dental appointment, you need to tell us because dental anesthetic will kill you." Seeing this sign in a waiting room would be incredibly scary. You are fully aware that you'll be fine as you have not used any of the listed drugs within the past 12 hours, but that's completely irrelevant. The sign causes you to imagine the possibility of immense danger, which might scare you from going into your appointment regardless of your meth intake history. However, this sign is still important, much so in fact. They have to inform the meth abusers some way, even if their method ends up scaring non-meth abusers alike. When you see those lab safety pictograms, it causes you to fear making a mistake, which is important. Making a mistake in a lab is not hard. Even if a scientist believes they're taking every possible safety precaution, accidents happen, which is also scary. This exclamation point pictogram is for chemicals that could cause minor health issues, such as skin irritation, as well as chemicals that could damage the ozone layer. Ozone depletion is certainly an interesting topic as well, but I think it is one for another video. All of these induce this strange sense of impending danger. Some more than others, but the main pictogram here that jumps out to me is the one for environmental hazards. All of the other ones represent a definitive, recognizable danger, like a fire or an explosion, but this one is almost indirect. Fear of the other pictograms stem from knowing what might happen, while this one stems from not knowing what might happen. All fear stems from uncertainty, but this just feels so minorly yet irreversibly threatening. This single dead fish tells an entire story. A mass aquatic extinction event would be catastrophic, yet it couldn't possibly affect you. And while the death of a single fish caused by a minor lab accident would be almost meaningless, that single dead fish holds infinitely more weight. It holds the weight of uncertainty. Uncertainty about whether this is simply a dead fish, or if there will be millions to follow. This single dead fish within a red diamond is more than enough to elicit fear of causing damage to aquatic life. This pictogram is unique in that it does not signify a threat to yourself, rather a threat to an ecosystem almost entirely separate from our own. You fear what devastating consequences there might be as a result of your lab accident. Once you've made a horrible mistake, there will be a moment of pure regret. There's no going back. Your mistake is irreversible. With this pictogram, it feels not like a warning, rather it feels like the damage has already been done. You must live knowing you caused an ecological tragedy. Although, what if that was your goal? Plague Inc. is a strategy video game wherein your goal is to eradicate humanity with an artificial disease. In the game, you pick a country for your disease to start in, and then you mutate its transmission and symptoms until you've killed every human being on Earth. Playing this game creates a strange atmosphere. You feel so evil yet uncaring. The idea of eradicating humanity is frightening despite knowing it is just a video game. The meaningless inhabitants of Earth in Plague Inc. are so helpless. They remain hopeful until there are only a few left, each of them fully understanding they may end up being the last. One single human being will die all on their own. They will be entirely aware that this is truly it, not just for them but for humankind as we know it. This single human being left on Earth is no different from that single fish within the lab safety pictogram. That single remaining life will suffer, while you are left entirely unconcerned by it. In Plague Inc., you are completely and utterly indifferent to that single remaining life by the end of the game. In Plague Inc., you are a monster. Back to the pictograms, some of them make you feel as though you are a helpless person below an unstoppable threat. The pictogram for long-term health hazards gives off the same energy. The threat is personalized. It applies solely to yourself. You are warned that you yourself could be in danger. Your lab accident will affect you and only you. It feels like you're in danger from simply observing it. Kind of like those silica gel packets. And while the warnings on those packets are not quite as intimidating as some of these pictograms, they do their job of keeping you safe, and they are keen at it. It's quite like this sign. This sign is a warning for submerged weirs. A weir is a type of dam, which is simply a ground-level plane that slopes to a lower plane. Water will run along the top plane and irrigate down the slope. Normally, the water level should be safely shallow. However, if the water level on the lower plane goes above the point at which the slope meets the lower plane, it will create this whirlpool effect, which is caused by the water rushing into itself. If you get caught in one, it is nearly impossible to escape, aptly named the drowning machine. This sign does its job flawlessly. Everyone who sees this is going to stay the hell away from the dam permanently. This sign and the lab safety pictograms share a very specific energy, and they seem to tap into a very sensitive fear. Signs like this evoke a personalized fear, a fear that you will be the only one endangered by whatever threat there may be. You fear that you will die alone without anyone there to save you. The sign gives you a chance to save yourself from a tragic death, and one you must go through all on your own. This sign causes you to think about how awful it would be to drown. This sign makes you adverse to the idea of going anywhere near a drowning machine. And much like with the lab safety pictograms, that is entirely the point of the sign. The sign should scare you. If it doesn't, then it's not a very good warning sign. There's a subreddit for signs like this, r/scary signs. Scrolling through top of all time, you will see signs that give off the same energy as that submerged weir sign, but they do deviate a bit from each other while still operating under the same kind of idea and energy these warning signs typically have, as is the same with the lab safety pictograms. If I were to show someone an example of these scary signs, this one would be my go-to. This one is also undeniably worth mentioning in this context, however, I don't think it's the best example. There's too much to see beyond simply a scary sign. With many of these signs, the danger is left up to the imagination. Some of them will have the danger in the background or something like that, but typically you are only meant to imagine what the danger would look like, whether you want to or not. There are plenty other good examples, and I feel as though they can fall within two categories while maintaining the scary sign energy. Many of them cause you to fear an accident, but sometimes it feels like the sign simply isn't enough. It feels like the sign isn't warning you about what could happen, rather informing you of what already has. With this sign, it tells you to turn around. It pulls no punches in telling you that if you do not turn around now, you will die. The sign warns you of what will happen if you make the wrong choice, and if you do, there won't be anyone to help you. It feels like you still have a chance. But with this sign, it feels as though the sign is telling you it's already too late, and you begin to feel like there is nothing you can do. You begin to feel like a helpless inhabitant of Earth within Plague Inc. You begin to feel like that single fish in the environmental hazard pictogram. The sign only reminds you of how helpless you are to natural disaster. For example, all a tornado siren can do is let you know there is a tornado coming. All it can do is prepare you for what is inevitable to come, and once it does, all you can do is evacuate. All you can do is run away. These signs so effortlessly signify danger. It's as if red and white is all a sign needs to do so. All of these signs look quite scary, and that is what I have solely focused on up until now. But what is the least scary sign? More specifically, what is the least scary warning sign? Some of these signs have little to no effect on me, while others are just plain funny. And this one is just sad. You could say something like a speed limit sign or a no U-turn sign is the least scary warning sign, and you might be right. But even then, the highway Gothic font is enough to somewhat remind of ominous warning signs, not making them anywhere near as intimidating, but they are mildly unsettling in resemblance nonetheless. Even signs that dip into a familiar atmosphere have this effect, like those neighborhood watch signs. They take the peace of a safe environment and remind you of danger. They remind you that you have no idea what suspicious character might be lurking outside at night. They remind you that dangerous individuals wander the streets of even sleepy suburban environments, and that could be within your own town. Some of these signs take what should be a fun, happy location and make it grim. These signs could tell you to have fun, but even they can't ignore the danger of an unclimbable mountain. Some of these signs are downright macabre, and it only makes it worse knowing just how brutally honest and important they are. So I don't think a speed limit sign really counts as a scary sign in regards to the other ones, not even on the mild end. The most mild sign that fits in with them might be a wet floor sign. They're so common, so polite. When you see a wet floor sign, there's not much fear or hesitation to proceed. You're simply aware there is a wet floor. If there's a so-called scariness chart for these signs, I'd say wet floor signs would certainly be at the back end. Obviously because they really aren't that scary, they're quite tame, and you will most likely see one if you walk into a store or a gas station. But I believe the commonality of these signs most certainly changes how scary they might be. It really isn't very often you will come across a sign in real life worthy of being posted on r/scary signs. Although, signs I see somewhat commonly that always scared me when I was younger are those high voltage signs. They genuinely signify danger, but they can't really scare you that much. Despite how lethal a deadly amount of electricity is, it's nowhere near as scary as a sign vaguely describing your horrific death. But you can find these everywhere. Electrical boxes, substations, all over the place. I would say these high voltage signs create a middle ground between the back end and the far end of this scale. This middle ground seems to have the highest density and variety of signs. There are even ones that match this level in my home, like this bucket, this fridge magnet. Even my stove has a warning that would fit in amongst the mid-level scary signs. If those are the least scary signs, then what is at the other end of the scale? What is the scariest warning sign? I've certainly shown a few that might fill that spot, but I think this one really takes the cake. This is a sign that reads Deja Vu area. This is your first time here. If this platform feels familiar, immediately alert an MTA employee. If you see something, say something. The first time I saw this, I thought it was one of the coolest yet most unsettling things I'd ever seen. I immediately thought it had to be some kind of SCP thing. Come to think of it, SCP class identification signs definitely have the same vibe as a lot of these scary signs. I could totally imagine an SCP being made out of this sign. It is also very unique in its mystery. Deja vu is normally just a cool little phenomenon, but using it for this concept is so interestingly creepy. Since I found this so cool, I was curious as to the origins of the image. First, to base things off the image itself, it is pretty obvious it's a real image. I immediately thought it might be 3D generated, but if you look closely, it looks way too good to be 3D generated. Knowing it's a real image, it obviously isn't a real warning sign. It must be a joke or vandalism. But this is such an odd and cryptic way to vandalize something, just slapping a sticker onto some random window. Therefore, it could be some kind of art piece. So where is this? There appears to be some kind of metal framing around the window, and as for what is beyond it, well, it's hard to tell between the reflections and how smudged the window is. One thing you can definitely see through the window is some person walking, as well as this strip running along the ground and this strip running along the wall. Based on the image alone, it would appear to be in a subway station, but let's do some digging. There's a post asking about this image on r/RBI, or Reddit Bureau of Investigation. A few people talk about this sign appearing in the video game Control, but several other commenters said they've played through the entire game and never saw a sign like that. Another person says they think it's an unused game asset. So no strong evidence saying it's from Control. But what's this? Another commenter linked the sign back to a post on r/Nightvale with the same image, the earliest post of the image, posted by u/BotGlass. I reached out to BotGlass, but they never responded. Luckily, though, if we search through their Reddit comments, we can find some more information. This comment from them on the actual RBI post says, "Of all the things I've made, I never thought this work would inspire tourism in my city. I hope your trip is every bit as cryptic and disturbing as you'd like it to be." This clearly means that BotGlass is the photographer behind the Deja Vu sign image. But there are still a couple things missing. What's the sign itself from, and where is this taken? We do have an answer as to the location mystery. BotGlass made a reply to someone else's comment, which reads, "You've got the city right. It's the DeKalb Avenue BQR though, in downtown Brooklyn." If we look up that location, we can find it is in fact a subway station. This is a photo of the station itself, and it looks exactly like what we see through the window in the Deja Vu sign image. You can see this yellow strip along the ground and these red and white strips along the wall, matching perfectly with what we see in the image. We can also tell now that this is a pillar. But where's this window? If we look at another photo of the station, we can see there's an elevator, which looks exactly like what we see in the image. Now then, what about the sign itself? It would appear that BotGlass themselves put up the sign. This would work in favor of the possibility that the sign actually is an unused asset in the game Control. Perhaps BotGlass is a fan of the game and printed it out to hang on an elevator within their hometown. But their phrasing, "of all the things I have made," this could mean they designed the sign themselves. If we look a little closer at this, we can figure out what the sign means by MTA employee, and if you see something, say something. MTA most certainly refers to the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, which is a corporation responsible for public transit within metropolitan New York City. If we look closer at the sign, we can actually see the MTA logo, and if you see something, say something is most certainly a nod to a sign that is typically found within subway stations and malls. The sign is basically just telling you to report suspicious activity if spotted. It would make perfect sense if BotGlass designed the sign themselves. It feels as though the sign was created specifically for this purpose, and if it was, then it has garnered my respect. This is an insanely cool work of art. Like I said earlier, the sign is very reminiscent of SCP. As others have also pointed out, there is an SCP that is vaguely similar to this that plays around with Deja Vu, SCP-292. SCP-292 is a large metal 1-minute hourglass. It functions as a normal hourglass as long as you let all the sand transfer to the bottom bulb each time you flip it. If you attempt to flip it before all the sand has reached the bottom bulb, time will move backward to a time before it was flipped, and then time will resume normally. The side effect of this anomaly is a hypnotizing sense of déjà vu. Another SCP people equate this sign to as SCP-184. SCP-184 is a highly magnetic dodecahedron-shaped object. If it is placed into a room, in 1 hour it will begin expanding the dimensions of the room, without altering the outside structure of the building in any way. In one day, the object can expand a room by several hundred meters. This expansion continues until the original dimensions of the room have been tripled. This is certainly interesting, and while a hallway receding for hundreds of meters certainly could feel reminiscent of Deja Vu, I don't think it holds much relevance in regards to the Deja Vu sign image. Yet another intriguing comparison people on Reddit have made is to the Scarfolk Council. The Scarfolk Council is a blog wherein there will be posts of cryptic 70s-style propaganda posters. These posters have the same energy as the Deja Vu sign. They too play on fear of uncertainty. These make you feel very uneasy. They make you feel as though there is someone standing behind you. They withhold just enough information from these posters to leave you seriously freaked out. These posters tell the story about wild horror concepts being commonplace within a northwestern English town. It's almost like 70s analog horror. Abstract vistas of a time not long before our own. The posters allow us to imagine an alternate universe, a grim reality where brutally horrifying phenomena litter everyday life. While this is also interesting, I feel like attempting to ascribe further detail to the sign ruins the intrigue. Most of the allure I feel comes from how mysterious it is. It causes me to ask myself, what does this mean? Why is this the way it is? It's unsettling in such an abstract way that is principally supported by uncertainty. It doesn't play on fear of some horrible natural disaster or dangerous geography like the other signs do. It plays on fear of something we cannot run from, our own mental perception. And while that may not pose a physical threat to us, it certainly is a whole awful lot scarier than any warning sign. And even though we cannot escape psychological fear, perhaps it is better that way. While these concepts cause immense dread, we can find comfort in knowing they aren't real, and much like with the scary signs, if we trust ourselves, the fantasy will remain purely fictitious.